You're looking at this and wondering what this thing is. This contraption is called a Quincunx process generator, Q-U-I-N-C-U-N-X. And what this device is going to do is it's going to help me to simulate a manufacturing process or making of a tangible product. It might be hamburgers, it might be prescription pills, it might be widgets. But to show you some of the parts of this Quincunx generator, up at the top is we have a series of red beads. These are going to represent the product that we're making. And then we have this red slider part here. You see it right here. That's going to be the centering of our process. Now, in reality, we're not going to really know where that is. We won't be able to see that. We're going to have to run some parts to find out where the centering of our process is. But that is going to be the centering of our process, like it or not. Okay. Now, we have a collection area down here. This collection area down here is going to it's actually going to build up a distribution as we run production. Let me show you. We have the conveyor belt here that I'm sliding back and forth, and this is going to be our production as we're going along. And that chute is, down these chutes, is going to collect our product as we're making it. One of the concepts I want you to be watching for is randomness. Well, how do you know your process is random? Well, it's going through these series of studs, which is one of the parts of this Quincunx generator that's going to simulate the variation you're going to find from the 6 M's. What are the 6 M's? The man in the generic sense. What is it about the person running the process? The machine, the material, the method, measurement, and Mother Nature. Those 6 M's are going to be simulated by these beads. As you see these, the variation as it's going down through these beads, we would expect to see some variation, and we want to know whether it's random or not. Why do we want to know if it's random or not? Well, we want to know if the process is acting with no undue influence of any of those 6 M's. Let's take one category at a time, the man component of this, me. If I was doing something unduly influencing this process, it wouldn't look like a bell shape here where you have most of the values in the center and fewer values tailing out gradually to each side. But I'm not unduly influencing the process, and that's why you're getting this bell shape. Now, what I'm trying to do here is to run all of my production. I've got a few stragglers here. I've got to kind of tip this forward, and we'll get those run out. Now what you're looking at here, there's a few left there, but just pretend they all went through. Now, notice that we have this bell shape. Now, is it perfect? No. You would need an infinite sample size to have a perfect bell-shaped curve. And I'd have to draw this an infinite number of times to draw a perfect bell-shaped curve, and that's going to take too long, so let's just live with that. We do have, it looks like a bell shape, so obviously there's no undue influence. And what you're also looking at, since I ran every single red bead down through here, you have what's called a population. A population is when you have every single measurement. And so now we have every single measurement. That's a population. And just like if someone comes up to you and asks, what radio station do you listen to or what television channel do you watch, they don't go out and ask 300,000 or 300 million people in the United States what television station they watch. They maybe, if they do this randomly, ask maybe 1,200, 1,500 people, and they'll get a good idea of what the process is capable of producing or what television station they're watching based upon a sampling of the population. This is the whole population. You've got all the parts run. But in our world of Six Sigma, you're not going to have the luxury a lot of times of having all the measurements. It's not economical. So you're going to have to take a sample. Now, what's a sample? A sample is pretty simple. It's basically a small portion or small part of the population. Let me show you. Now, I've drawn what that kind of looked like there, and I'm going to tip this upside down, if you bear with me a second. So I have beads to work with. Now, notice when I do this that we're going to be able to approximate with much less than the number of beads that we started with a very small portion of this. And again, you should see it's not going to be perfect because you'd need an infinite sample size to get a perfect bell shape. But with a lot less beads, you should see where you have most of the values in the center and fewer tailing out to either side, again, indicating there's no undue influence. Now, is that perfect? No. But it does look like you've got more of the values in the center portion of this, and they do tail out gradually. Now, with the population, you've got two things from that. Number one, you've got a central tendency. If you look at the peak of this, that's where it's centered. Now, if I took this slider where the chute that all the beads fell down through and I had it way over here, you'd have that same shape, but it'd be over here. If it was on the other side, you'd have basically the same shape, but it'd be over here. But I happen to have it in the center, and so that's where my process was centered. And I know that because I'm practicing Six Sigma, I now have a picture of what my process is doing. Now, let's say that you weren't practicing Six Sigma. You wouldn't really see these, would you? You would just be making parts. They would go down the line to some inspector, and they would determine whether they were good or not. But you've got a snapshot of what your process is doing right there. You've got a central idea of where they are. And even though I don't have the whole population here, I've got a good idea that the center of this process is somewhere around where the center of the population was by using a sample. Now, a sample could be one part. Let's do this. Let's just take one part. It could be one part. Now, that's representative of this, but it doesn't tell you much. How do you get a central tendency of this, of one value? You don't. I mean, you'd need at least 2, 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3, and so forth. But also, you had an idea of how fat that distribution was. Now, doesn't it stand to reason if I had more or less of these studs, it would change how fat this was? If I only had just a few layers here, that would probably be wider or narrower. And if I had a whole bunch more of these, it would be probably wider or narrower because I've changed the process by changing the amount of variation in it. Well, just one value doesn't tell you anything about the central tendency, nor does it tell you anything about how fat that dispersion is, as it's called, or fatness of this distribution. Well, just for argument's sake, let's do this. Let's say that our customer expectations, and I'll just kind of draw out where the ends of these distribution happen to land. And let's draw these up here, and you'll see why I'm drawing these in a minute. And then I'll erase this, I'll erase this bell. Good catch, Dan. All right. All right. Now, these are our customer expectations. We can't make them outside of these lines. We can't make them, we can make them inside, and that's it. It's like field goals, right? We've got to make them somewhere within there. Well, when I set up my process in the morning, let's say I'm a brand new inspector, or a brand new operator, and I set up my process in the morning, and remember, I don't know where I'm centered. I don't know until I run a part, right? So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to be getting one part and measuring and seeing where I look. Now, I can see I'm really close to the edge of the road. That's not good. Where would I want to be? I want to be in the center, right? So I'd want to scooch this thing over, but remember, I don't know how much to adjust it. And now you at home can see that I've adjusted way over too much, but remember, I can't see this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take another sample and see if I've made my process any better. So I take a sample. Oh, I went too far. Okay, so I haven't run any production yet, and I'm starting to get a little impatient. I've over-adjusted again, but I don't know that because I've got to take another sample to see where I am. And I look at that, and that looks pretty good. Is it exactly in the center? No. But what are 99% of managers going to tell you? If you set up your process, you've run some sample parts, and you're pretty close to the center, what are they going to tell you to do? Yeah, exactly. They're going to tell you to run it, all right? You got production to get out. So, okay, I'm ready to rock and roll here, and I'm going along. And I'm thinking, wow, boy, I'm glad I got this job. I feel pretty good about this. You got pretty good benefits here, and you know, on holidays, they give you a free ham, sometimes a free turkey, and so forth. And I stop for lunch and go to lunch for a while, and then I'm back, and I finish out the afternoon. I'm going along and thinking, boy, not a bad place to work. Pretty glad it's going the way it is. Stop my process. But remember, if I'm not practicing Six Sigma down here, I can't see this. I can't see that any kind of shape, or I don't know how wide my distribution is. I don't know where it's centered or anything. I just know, now think about this. The only thing I know is when I set up this morning, I'd adjusted and then over-adjusted and kind of tweaked it in and got it. I felt like it had to warm up. And where was that one that I ran this morning? Pretty close to the center. So all day long, I'm running along thinking I'm doing a good job. I'm getting production out. Things are looking good. The boss is really going to like me. But in reality, these are, they're going in some tub somewhere. I don't even see this distribution. They're just going in some tub, and they're going down the line, and someone's inspecting these that are out of spec down here, right? What's the boss going to do? The boss is going to come back to me and say, geez, I hired you, and what the heck, you got 20, 30% of parts out of spec here. What kind of worker are you? I thought you knew what you were doing. And, you explain, well, geez, I don't know. When I set up this morning, it looked pretty good to me. Now notice, I want you to look down here. Notice the shape of that. What did I say? First thing I wanted you to look for. Think about this. What's the first thing I wanted you to look for with a distribution? Is it bell-shaped? Why do I want you to look for that? Because if it's bell-shaped, this is a key point, if it's bell-shaped, you have no undue influence of the 6 M's. So to beat me up when you've got a bell shape, I have no more to do with that bell shape acting randomly than does the machine, the material, the method or measurement or Mother Nature. So it's clearly inappropriate to beat me up when it's a bell shape. Well, I ran one part and it looked good and I couldn't see that because I wasn't practicing Six Sigma yet. So the boss says, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you another chance. You come in tomorrow and I'll tell you what. Here's what I want you to do. And I have to apologize, I didn't really train you very well. But what I want you to do is I want you to adjust the process to the center. Whenever you get a measurement, whenever you take a sample and it isn't right at the center, I want you to adjust to the center. Well, I heard that loud and clear. I want to keep my job, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so this is a brand new day. I'm going to look to see where I am. I'm a little bit off center, so I'm going to come over a little bit. I've got to get production looking good here. Okay, so now, what did my boss say? My boss said I've got to come over to the center. So right now, remember, I can't see this. So I've got to come over, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 or so slots. I'm going to come over 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm thinking I'm centered now. So I'm going to run 10 or 15 parts over here. Stop my process, take a sample. Okay, I've got to come over 1, 2, 3, 4 this way. Thinking my process just needs to warm up. And run 10 or so parts, stop my process, take a sample. I've got to come over, looks like 1, 1.5, something like that. And run 10 or 15 parts. Stop my process. Again, take a sample. Okay, looks like I got to come over a couple. 1, 2. Take a sample. Looks like I got to come over a couple. See, I'm coming over this way to get to the center, so I had to move. I don't see this, but I know I've got to adjust this way. Run 10 or so parts. Take a sample. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 3.5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.5. And I'm thinking to myself, my boss is right. I should have paid attention a little bit more yesterday. Stop my process, measure more often, and so forth. Okay, now, which way should I go? Now, notice that I'm supposed to be over to the center, and I can't see this. I can't see this over here, and I've got to be over the center, so which way should I go? I should actually go this way. Remember, I can't see this, so I'm thinking I've got to go this way. So really what I'm doing is I'm making my process worse, but I can't see that. I'm going by what the part's telling me. So I'm thinking now I'm centered. I'm going to run some parts here. My conveyor belt would work a little bit better. Stop my process, take a sample. Oh, no. Now what do? I'm thinking I've run production all day long. And every single part I'm thinking has been in spec. And now I get one that's out of spec over here in my sample. And you know what? I'm not sure where that happened. I know I only ran 15 or so parts, but I don't really know where they went here. And I'm afraid that I've got bad product. Now there's two ways of looking at this. Real life, or what you should do, or what probably is reality. Reality is probably this person is going to say, I think that's just a fluke. And I'm going to ignore that one, kind of hold it off to the side and pray that it doesn't happen again. Or they're going to say, well, I think that we should purge all of this because you don't know if there's bad product in there, and then I might get yelled at for purging a lot, but at least I know that I'm not going to have any bad product. So what would you do? Okay, so let's do this. If you think we should purge, call 1-800 right now, 1-800-555-PURGE. If you think we should say it's a fluke, call 1-800 right now, 555-FLUKE. Okay, and the results are coming in right now. They say we should keep running. It was just a fluke. Okay, but we will take another sample. It was a fluke. Look at that. It's beautiful. Right in the center, right? It was a fluke. You guys that voted fluke are clearly the winners in this one. Now, obviously, I'm kidding on that. But I stopped my process, take another sample. Look at that. Beautiful. Right in the center. I might even, actually, it should come over a little bit, shouldn't it? Looked like it's come over one notch here to be perfectly centered, right, Jake? Perfectly. We want perfect, right? Oh, I gotta open the gate here. And stop my process, take a sample. How about that? Is that nice? I'm running right in center. I'm thinking I'm right in the smack dab in the center when clearly you at home can see how far off I am. But I'm making my judgments based upon where the parts I'm seeing. So I finish out my production run. I realize I've been doing a lot of inspection and so forth and slowing down my process. I finish it out. What's the first thing I said to look for? Bell shape. Is that a bell shape? Well, you could argue that it is. It looks like maybe most of the values in the center. Maybe we have, a little bell shape here, and maybe another one here, and maybe another one here. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we've been adjusting all over. What's the boss going to say this time? The boss is going to say, what did I tell you yesterday? I said, I want you to stop the process more often, take a sample, measure it, and adjust to the center. Now notice, when we started, our process variation was, well, let me erase this to kind of illustrate this a little clearer. I get kind of messy. Here we go. Our process was this wide when we started, remember? Try to draw these upside down, Jake. I have a hard enough time right side up. And the boss is going to come by and say, what did I tell you? I said yesterday, I want you to adjust to the center, and you made even more bad product today than you made yesterday. What's up? I don't know, man. Every time I measured, they were right in the center. I adjusted it every night. I hope you didn't find out about that one, Jake. That one that was a fluke, but you saw it at home. That was clearly a fluke because the next time I did it, it was perfect. And notice what happened to our overall variation width. Now, this flies in the face of common sense, but the more you adjust your process to the center, and your most conscientious operators are doing this, the more you adjust your process to the center, the more you're increasing variation instead of decreasing variation. Let me repeat that. The more you adjust to the center, and like I said, it flies in the face of common sense. You would think the more you're adjusting it to the center, the more you're shrinking variation. The more you adjust to the center, the more you're increasing variation. And also, is that a bell shape with all those peaks? Well, no. The reason being is the man in this case was unduly affecting the process. So you have many peaks in that process. That's why it doesn't look like a bell shape anymore. Well, hopefully this demonstrated a number of things. The randomness. How do you know a process is random? Most of the values are in the center, and they tail off gradually to each side. We talked about a population versus a sample. A population is the whole, all the beads, right? All of them. If I was to measure how people thought about which television station they watched, I'd have to go to all 300 million people, and that's not practical. So we take samples. A sample could be 1, it could be 20, 30, whatever, but they're a subset of the population. They're a part of the population. And you're going to make inferences based upon what a smaller number of samples are telling you about the bigger population. The third thing, what can you tell about a process by looking at one part every so often? Not a lot, based upon what you just saw here, because we thought we were in the center when clearly our process overall was spilling over the edge, but we didn't see that, other than that fluke, but we thought that was a fluke. And the last thing is the more you adjust your process to center, the more you're increasing variation. And this is going to come back to haunt you, believe me, in later lectures and in real life. The more you adjust your process to the center, the more you increase variation instead of decreasing it. Thank you.